Okay, so here we are, about halfway through the Advent season, moving on towards Christmas, the big show. And Christmas is a colossal time of the year. And it's the whole year builds up to this crescendo that is Christmas. Not the colossal default mode of Christmas that we tend to overschedule ourselves in. You know, Christmas could be colossal because we feel all this financial pressure to go buy gifts, to share the right gifts, with all these people. And then we got to make sure we get the perfect gift, the correct gift, and it feels like a colossal pressure. And then it makes Christmas feel like colossal chaos with all these senses of pressures that we have. But how can we make Christmas colossal? Not with all these pressures and things, but with a sense of peace and a sense of joy that wells up from deep within inside of you and pours out from the top of your head to everybody that comes around you. Globally, the church has had about 1,400 years to prepare so that Christmas is colossal with its meaning. And we call it Advent. And this is the place on the Christmas calendar where we go through the life of Jesus leading up to the colossal Christmas story. Advent's this preparation of the coming of Christ where we wait with great anticipation. It's designed to be the 4-week period that starts right after Thanksgiving. And so Christmas, it's never to be a cold start. We're supposed to be building up, getting excited, warming up to it. It's a time of joyful waiting, expectation that Christ has come and He is the King. And we're excited to be a part of His family. That is what a colossal Christmas is. And so it's during Advent that we let 3 colossal prayers turn our chaotic Christmas season into a Christ-centered Christmas season. And we're going to look at these 3 different prayers from Colossians chapter 1 tonight. Colossians, right? Because that's pretty colossal. Yeah, I'll give you a minute. These prayers we're going to talk about this week and next week, they'll help us exit the chaos and enter the true meaning. As a kid, I would go out to the backyard and I'd split firewood for the family, and I'd split it, I'd stack it, I'd carry it up to the house, and we burnt a wood stove for heat. And there would be days we'd get to go out and we'd play for hours in the snow, hours and hours, and we'd come in, we'd peel out of our 3 layers of soaking wet frozen clothing with the snot frozen coming out of our nose, all those wonderful childhood memories. And we would sit in front of Dad's wood stove, and actually we would stand there, and you would just literally feel a thaw coming over your body, and your skin tone, your cheeks would turn from rosy red back to a natural flesh color, and it would just be so relaxing. I mean, even thinking about it now, I can think about it burning my backside and just getting comfortable as a little kid around that fire. And it would be so comforting, so relaxing, that many times as kids, we would just lay down in front of it and we'd play with our cars or play board games and just be together there in that comfortable environment. And that's what these prayers that we're going to talk about, that's what they're going to do for you. That's what we want them to do in our lives. Exit the chaos and settle down into the joy and the meaning that is Christ in Christmas. So the chaos Christmas, it's going to be chaotic. And that's where our culture is going to take you. I mean, you look at the marketers as they hijack the Advent season. They push shopping back further and further. The radio stations start Christmas music the second the kids get done opening their candy from Halloween. I mean, it's this big commercialism role. And if you go with the marketers who are trying to hijack our Advent, you end up with consumeristic, overscheduled, spiritually starved version of Christmas. But you and I, we can intentionally choose a Christ-centered Christmas. And I want to help you do that. And we're going to do it by immersing ourselves in one specific chapter, Colossians 1. And why Colossians? Most people don't think of that as being the Christmas story out of the Gospels. But it's likely the richest, most dense scripture of Christology in the entire New Testament. And to help help find who Jesus is, to find the wonder and the joy and the beauty, the infinite well of life that Jesus is in Colossians 1. Colossians 1, as the writer writes it out, it's a prayer, and then there's a song. And that's the way the structure goes through there. For every verse, there's a song. And whenever the writer wants to give us a deep theology out of these scriptures, he puts it in a song. And why? Because think about it. Every time there's a certain song you hear, it transports you to a specific place and time. And more than just being in that moment, it'll sometimes shift your state of being. A certain song could take you from being mopey to excited or happy. And so as we go through these scriptures and prayers, it's going to lead us down to meet Jesus. Where we meet Jesus, on the other side is where we find life and meaning. It's the colossal song or hymn that will widen our understanding of Jesus during Advent, and the colossal prayers that will deepen our experience of Jesus during Advent. So as we widen our understanding of Jesus, we will deepen our experience of him this season. So this comes down to an important question. How big is God to you? Because the way I live is a direct consequence of the size of my God. Just like a kid, their image of how big they think they are impacts how they live. How big are you, little Johnny? I'm so big and strong, I'm going to wrestle my uncle who's 30 years older than me. It's an image in their mind. So the image you have of God in your mind radically impacts the way you live. See, the God we meet in this tiny baby Jesus is actually an infinite God. And we can't wrap our minds, we can't get our little finite brains around comprehending him. And so many of us, we create in our mind this image of God, just this image, right? And it's created by a lot of things. Your personal history, your current circumstances, your religious upbringing, your family origin story. Most profoundly, your relationship with your mother and your father. It would seem that half the things people say about God stems from how they saw mom and dad. We would tend to project our image of God from who they were. And so we all have this image of God. And it's so small compared to who God really is. So we say Jesus is so big, but the image we have in our minds that we portray is so tiny. I have a little bobble Jesus. He's about this big that sits on my desk at work. And he always carries a little image. Someday it's like, yes, I want you to love your neighbor. That guy too. Or the image right now is, it's my birthday. But he's about this big. And it's kind of funny. But the image is kind of disturbing. Because all of us want a little Jesus that we can control. We all want a little Jesus that, domesticated. A little Jesus that we can put in our pocket so that when there's a problem, I can bring him out and I can shake out all the Jesus glitter on everything. Put the Jesus dust out there like Tinkerbell, so that I can get what it is I want. And then when it's done, I just want to put Jesus back in my pocket. And the issue is, if I live with a little Jesus, I'm going to live in constant low-grade state of fear and anxiety. See, the circumstances I'm up against a lot of times feel colossally large, oppressive, difficult, and challenging. But then my image of Jesus, it doesn't correlate with the real Jesus. And so I end up looking at my circumstances, and I look at my little Jesus I pull out of my pocket, and I go, what on earth are you going to do? This is so much bigger than you. So I become afraid and I become anxious. If I live with a tiny Jesus, when someone disapproves of me, I'll get all twisted up in knots about it. This is why so many of us dread Christmas, right? Because we know we're going to have to get together with people who have a problem with us. And we likely have a problem with them too. So then I don't look forward to these family gatherings because it's going to be complicated. It's going to be messy. And what do they think of me? And did I get them the right gift? And is my house clean enough? And oh my, this and all that. However, if I know that I have a big God, then how big is my Jesus? See, when I realize that His love is big, then when He tells me who I am, then I don't care what you think of me. I mean, in a good way, in a good sort of way. I don't need your approval. I don't need your validation to know that I'm a valuable person, because I know that I'm valuable to God. My God, who is so big. But if my Jesus is tiny, then I desperately seek out your approval. I desperately need you to tell me that I matter. So if I live with a little Jesus, I'm going to find myself driven to perform flawlessly all the time. Remember that in the story of our prodigal son? We use this equation, my identity equals opinion of others times my performance. For some of us, preparing for Christmas is an Olympic event. You know, I got the dinner games over here, the presents over here, the meetings I've got to be at, the schedules, the things to get to. And I've got to get them just right. I've just got to get them right. And we run ourselves ragged. And why? Because we think our value equals performance. And we think that Christmas is the big event at the end of the year, and I want to make sure that my scorecard for the end of the year has some good marks on it, because I probably had some bad marks throughout the year, like shopping for Christmas gifts or in traffic at the mall. However, when we take time and we understand and we realize that God is so big, that His grace, unconditional acceptance of you is so big, then we can truly rest. But when we shrink down Jesus, we offer up prayers that are without faith, worship without awe, our service is without joy, and our suffering is without hope. See, a little Jesus syndrome, it's a misery and it's a tragedy. So how big is Jesus? I'm going to tell you, He's so big that He's colossal. In Colossians chapter 1, we see this description, this answer to Jesus. How big are you? And so this is a song that Paul wrote about Jesus. And the first prayer matches the first verse. He says, Jesus, and because Jesus was born to bring me the colossal gift of God's supremacy, if I accept this gift, I will receive colossal wisdom and understanding. See, He wants me to have the gift of God's supremacy. And when I let this image grow wider in my view, it will deepen my practical experience of wisdom and understanding. And if there's a problem that you cannot solve in life, check out the hook while my DJ revolves it. No. If there's a problem in life that you can't solve, what you need is wisdom and understanding. And what's the opposite of understanding? It's confusion. And what's the opposite of wisdom? Well, it's foolishness. Some of us, we're up against some stuff in our lives, and we have really been hurting as we go through it because we're confused. And then we're grieving because some of our past decisions were probably foolish. In chapters 3 and 4 in Colossians, they're the extremely practical things that Paul writes. And he's writing to the Colossian church at this time because their marriages are a mess. Their parenting is dysfunctional. There's a lot of gossip and slander. And he writes about their chaos in the workplace and tension. This kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? But Paul doesn't start out with steps 3 of how to fix it. You know, the 12 steps to sanity. He gets to that in chapters 3 and 4, but he starts out in 1. He says, your real issue with all of your problems and your chaos is that your Jesus is too small. Paul said, we're going to get to that practical stuff, but let's start at the beginning with the root of our problem. And that's that we have to get Jesus right first. And so as your view of Jesus keeps expanding, especially his supremacy, you're going to find that wisdom and understanding begin to flow into your life. At Christmas time, we like to see the Christmas Jesus, right? The theologian, the great writer theologian who told us about, the all 8 pounds, 6 ounce Jesus in his golden fleece diaper with this tiny ball fist in the air. You remember that theologian? Ricky Bobby? That's what we want to think about. So here's the song. Colossians 1:15. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Paul is singing this. He's declaring that Jesus is so big. He's so colossal. And it's the supremacy of God in Christ. And so now we look at the prayer in Colossians 1. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God. And so this doxology, this song, tells us about the kingship of Jesus that is. And it's the prayer that tells us about the kingship of Jesus that can be in our lives. See, Paul is inviting us here to look at the vastness of creation, the immensity of the universe, and that it's Jesus who thought it all up. That he's the architect, he's the creator, and he's the sustainer of it all. See, the hymn here is about the cosmic kingship of Christ, and the prayer is about the personal kingship of Christ. And when I begin to comprehend the real Jesus, not my pocket Jesus, but that Jesus is a real cosmic king over all of creation, the more I can comprehend that, the more I realize that he should be, he needs to be, he has to be my personal king. And so when the image of Jesus that hangs in the hallway of our soul begins to match up with the reality of the cosmic king, it's just normal and healthy to say, be my personal king. So how do we comprehend Jesus as the cosmic king? Paul says something that's very practical. He says, go back to creation. See, the first verse here is about creation. Paul says, here's what you do. He says, go out to the edge of the universe. Get in your little rocket ship, and I want you to fly all the way out there and imagine Jesus standing outside of our universe, holding the complete vastness of it like a tiny little marble, like a speck of dust in his hand. In the early 70s, James Irwin took one of the later orbits around the moon at the Christmas season. He stated that the earth looked like a fragile, beautiful Christmas ornament hanging against the vast darkness of space. And so Jesus, he's the cosmic king who's out there holding that ornament in the vastness of space and time. How big is Jesus? Paul said, imagine the vastness of creation, and Jesus just holds it all in the palm of his hand. And then realize that your problem in that little speck of dust, God's got this. Have you ever seen the Kansas early fall sky as the sun starts to set? The beautiful hues, the different colors. It's like an impressionist picture. In fact, if you take a photo like me and some friends did and you get it just right with the sun setting, people will swear that it's photoshopped. People will swear that somehow you've imaged that into your photo. Or have you ever watched the sunset on the ocean? Watch it fall off the edge of the world into the sea. It's some imagery in your mind when you see those of just how small we are. And it's so awe-inspiring to watch and see how perfect creation is. You get that image, right? Does it kind of fill you with a sense of awe when you think about being in that place? It's something that can't be reproduced except by the cosmic King Jesus. Because Jesus will turn the chaos into cosmos. He can bring order and beauty. So what is your chaos that you need Jesus to turn into cosmos? This time of year, there's financial chaos, there's emotional chaos, there's relational chaos, workplace chaos. And Jesus, He's the one that can bring order, beauty, and life. And so we take this verse in Colossians about Christ as the Creator, and we proclaim it out loudly, at least once a day. Make it an act in your life of a holy rebellion, not to settle for a tiny Jesus, because a little Jesus is misery and tragedy. And to say, I'm not going to settle for the image of a shrunken God in my mind based on my mommy and daddy or past religious experiences. I want to meet the real Christ. And if you've got a problem right now and it feels bigger with Jesus than Jesus, you're not really dealing with the real Jesus. Because the real Jesus is infinitely larger than whatever your chaos is. He is sufficient. So start proclaiming this doxology out loud. Then in your imagination, get in your rocket ship and go out to the edge of the universe and see it all like a marble in the hand of Jesus, next to whatever your chaos situation is. Take that chaos situation and just lift it up to Him. Realize how small it is in the vast immensity of time and space. And lastly, pray the colossal prayer. That colossal prayer that says, Father, continually fill me with the knowledge of your will through all the wisdom and understanding your Spirit gives. I put it in your notes so you can see it. And you can repeat the prayer slowly and let it deepen your experience of Jesus. In fact, we're going to practice it right now together a little bit. So if you would, stand to your feet with me. And we're going to look at Colossians 1:15, and we're going to read it together as a proclamation of our faith. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. Now where you stand, close your eyes and envision the swirling beauty, the vastness of this universe. And now in your mind, see Jesus standing there holding all of it like a little blue dot of our universe in His hand. What is your chaos today? That one specific situation, how small does that look now in comparison to Him? Lift that chaotic situation up to Him. Now let's read the prayer together. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of His will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please Him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God. Amen. Thank you for being here with us tonight.